people.
No. Just leave me back here.
Just leave you by.
Just leave me by myself.
I tell you what, I always feel so loved the weeks that I come back from vacation. I might need to go on vacation more often. Everyone's like, man, it's so good to see you.
Oh, God.
Like, man, I should leave more often.
Oh, we're glad when you're back.
Well, I'm glad
Chris
to
did
be
a great job. Joanna did a great job. You know, but it's always good to have you back.
Well, I was out. I mean, I've told you this already. My sister was getting married,
Yeah.
and that was man. I tell you, when an immediate sibling gets married, I mean, it's all hands on deck, right? You know, there's just a lot to do. I was doing the music. The girls, all three of the girls were the flower girls in the wedding. Don't let me put you to sleep.
Oh,
And then
sorry.
my son
tired.
I'm tired too. I was yawning while I was playing the piano. And then my son was the ring bearer.
Uh-oh.
And he was like, well, what am I going to do as the ring bearer? And I said, well, son, you know, they're going to give you the pillow or the box, whatever, and you can carry it up. Is it going to have the rings in it? No, it doesn't actually have the rings in it. It's just a simple. Wouldn't you know it, they gave him the real rings.
Yeah.
They gave him the real rings to carry.
Yeah. I've seen them tie them on the pillow, and the little boy takes them up. And
I looked at him, I was like,
untie
I looked at my sister, I said, you know, he wouldn't be able to find his own head if it wasn't attached to his body. That's what
He's a little boy. He's a boy. He's a man. Typical.
So I was back there, and I couldn't even coach him through it because, you know, I'm on the platform playing the guitar, and so I told my wife, I was like, now you tell him he needs to make a beeline to handing those things off.
Yeah.
We cannot lose
Eddie,
the
I don't know
rings.
where the rings went. I slung this thing at Harper, and I don't know, the rings came flying off of there.
I know. Harper's in here as our studio audience today. We've also got John Sistrunk, so don't worry, Joanna's outside. Don't worry, Joanna. We've got someone to get the numbers on our desk if we need it. You know, we're going to be.
We'll harass John today.
We love
instead
her.
of you.
We love harassing John. John's always so encouraging to us, and we just harass him in return. That's weird. It's not normal that I'm the one that's traveled and now I'm back. But you're going on a bunch of stuff coming up here.
I do. You know, this has been a very, very busy late July, August, now into September. Got a bunch of places I've got to be. But most of those won't require my doing more than a travel on a Monday or Thursday or something.
Well, I'll
like
tell
that.
you this. I'm really excited that they invited you back for the United Nations.
Yeah, I am too.
Because there were some
they
years
really
off
made a
from
big
that, right?
to-do. Well, I've taken the years off
okay.
because I didn't want to go to New York City.
Yeah, it's tough.
Because if I go, Debbie is gonna go, and I just don't think it's that safe.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but I don't. But they just insisted. And Debbie is there while the people are there insisting, okay, we're gonna come. And I'm saying, Deborah, don't tell them that because I don't want to go. So I just don't feel comfortable.
Well,
So,
but you are
hey,
going.
Here we're going.
You're going to
So-
preach the gospel to different what is it, ambassadors?
Well,
from other
it's a
nations.
prayer breakfast. I don't
Yeah.
know I'm not speaking at
Oh.
it, but I get to go and I get to see all the people that I've.
Now, is this one of those prayer breakfasts where they're going to get up and say amen and ah woman and all that
No,
nonsense?
Lord, no, I wouldn't be going to that.
Okay, I'm
the
just
guy
checking.
who runs this ministry is very conservative.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know him well. And Ken is very conservative, and no, we're not having an ecumenical gathering,
Okay.
so to speak.
That's
So-
good that you get to pray to
Yeah.
the one true
Yeah,
God.
yeah, we get to pray to the God who actually can hear you pray.
Well spoken, Pastor. It's good.
Anyway,
Good to be back. Sitting.
well, we're
sitting
glad
with
you're
you.
back. How long are you going to stay? You fixing to go off
I
again?
know I'm going to go off again. Well, I'm not going to miss another Sunday though. But
So you're
we're
going
gonna
on
go-
vacation?
Yeah, we're going to. What? So it was great to see my folks. It was awesome. That wasn't really a vacation because the whole thing. Well, it was sort of.
I
You know how
home,
it is.
Yeah.
And I gave my dad the day off. You know, he let me preach for him, so I gave him that Sunday off. But anyway, we're going to go for a real vacation. We're just going to go to the beach, not this week, but next week, and it'll be
good.
good. But I just love being here on Sunday, so I'll still
which
be
beach
here.
are you going to?
We're gonna
Would you
go to-
disclose it?
Well, I think so.
Waikiki?
It's the Fiji actually. No, we're going down to the I always forget. Harper, do you
Destin.
remember the name of it? No, it's not Destin. Santa Rosa, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
So we got one of those, we all pitched in money with our money, and we got one of those houses, and we're staying with all Lauren's family. It's going to be great.
Oh, okay. I thought you had the kids pitching in money on it.
Well, Harper, she offers up her money all the time, and I'm like, no, baby, you just hold your money. We're still working on how to spend money. She's always asked, can I spend my money on that? No, don't spend your money. Don't waste your money on that. Can I buy this? No, because I'm going to buy that for you. You don't need to buy it. So she's like, well, what's money even for? You don't let me spend it on anything.
You're a girl. You don't ever have to worry about it. You got a daddy, and then you'll have a husband. They'll take care of it.
Yeah, they can take care of it.
Don't worry about it.
Well, or else she might end up being like her mama, because her mama runs all the money in our house.
Well, mine does too.
You know, she's...
And I like it better that way. That way, I don't know anything.
Oh,
Ignorance is bliss
It is
in some
beautiful.
areas of life.
Well, and I was thinking about that when you talked about the can money buy happiness.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well, I feel pretty happy right now, and I don't even, I obviously we're provided for, but there's a lot. I just kind of like, well, day to day, we're fine, so I don't really.
So that $15,000 we pay you a year is taken care of.
Tell you
You're
what,
happy.
hey, like it said, 15 to 250,000 doesn't make any difference.
Can you believe that?
So if I'm making 15, it's fine. You know, get a lot of tax breaks when you're below the poverty line.
That is that's a mind-blowing statistic.
It really is. It really, and I believe it. Like it seems like. Obviously it's a stressor if you don't have enough money to provide for your basic needs.
yeah.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But once your basic needs are fulfilled, it's kind of like, well, I know the saying is true, the mo money, mo problems kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, you've got...
You know, I heard Johnny Carson one night, and he kind of made the step. He's going through yet another divorce.
Oh,
this has been
gosh,
years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And he made the comment, he said, you know, money can't buy happiness. He says it can make you a little bit more comfortable.
Sure.
You know. And there he is. He's going through another divorce.
Yeah.
And he's talking about all the alimony he has to pay. So.
Well, and you saw that. Well, I guess we can talk then about that word success in the Hebrew. I thought that was really interesting, because when we hear the word in English, when we hear success, it's always about fame or fortune.
Yes,
And
one or the other.
And you held up either Tom Cruise or I forget who the other one.
Tom Cruise.
Warren Buffett. Was
Warren
the other.
Buffett, financially, or Tom Cruise, the fame of Hollywood.
But yeah, I looked that up as you were talking, and you're right. You can go back to 2 Samuel 19, like crossing over a river.
Yeah.
That sort of. It was really different.
I didn't have time to do that, but it's an interesting passage that gives you real insight into a word in the Hebrew, in the Old Testament. And it's they kept crossing the ford to bring over the king's household, do what was good in his sight. And so as they kept crossing, the word is used there, that they're crossing it. They're able to go.
Success as they cross the river.
Yeah.
But this actually, we've joked a lot about the whole Hebrew scholar thing, but it's interesting how like a Hebrew word in a different tense can radically change meaning.
Oh, my
as
stars. Well. And that's the part that blows my mind with Hebrew.
Yeah.
Is, which is it, a Niphael, a PL, Hiphael.
The Hiphael is where it changes into the more success that we sort of understand. At least that's what I was looking at. But yeah, that's but the connectedness of that word and the way the root word comes up in different passages is so fascinating. And as we see it, as we understand that this is God's word, it just shows us His intentionality. Actually, while we're talking about that, I wanted you to have a chance to expound on one point you made in passing.
Okay.
Because you were saying how like Moses wrote this, but then you said, well, try saying that in a seminary today.
Yeah.
Tell the people what you mean by that.
Well, you've got so many people today who I hope not in Southern Baptist seminaries, but in most of the seminaries would say this is a collection of people that put this together.
Right.
And that it is not anything like Genesis 1, 2, and 3. It is not actual history. It is poetry. It is Hebrew poetry in a sense. When you look at Hebrew poetry. But they're just saying, well, this is just a story. This is just a neat way to tell a story about and explain the beginning of time, but it is not historic. God did not do this. He did not create an Adam and an Eve.
Right.
And Moses did not write the Pentateuch. I think that he did. Now, I don't think he was alone in that. I think he had these amanuenses.
Yeah, people writing it down
People
for him,
writing it down
secretaries.
for him as he was speaking this.
Well,
but
and then there's the
he is the author, I think, of the Pentateuch,
the
first 5 books of Moses.
Well, that's what-
or the 5. That's what it's called. That's what the Jews call it.
Yeah, and in other that's interesting. You know, we have the Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We don't think of it as the books of Moses, but like I remember I met a friend from Europe, and she was from Poland, and she said, yeah, in Polish these books are called the first book of Moses, the second book of Moses, and on down the line. And obviously, you can get to the end of Deuteronomy, you can read about the death of Moses. Well, it's safe to say Moses didn't write his own death account, but there's a good chance that was Joshua picking it up right after him. But yeah, so that's the whole textual criticism.
There is a theme that runs through that, and I'd marked it in one of my Bibles, and I don't have it marked in this one, but you can go back and you see where Joshua picks up writing, and then he places it inside the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to Samuel, and Samuel is right, and he places it inside the covenant, inside the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and so they put it all there. Then, of course,
prophets take over.
Then the prophets, and it's funny because the Sanhedrin only believed the first 5 books of Moses as being from God. They wouldn't believe the rest. They didn't believe the prophets. They didn't believe the writings.
Well, that's a really interesting.
But they were extreme liberals.
Well, but that point is really interesting because when you talk about the development of the canon of Scripture, there was a time when it had not been written down yet, right? And then there's obviously the time where the people of God have to. They're testing the Scriptures, right? Because there's a ton of other stuff being written that's not included. I mean, it's fascinating. It's something you could study for forever.
It is a fascinating, and I tell you, what's his name? Wallace from DTS. I think he's retired from DTS, and I can't remember his website, so I'm no help today. Does so much of that.
Yes.
And he does. You can trust him. He's great. He's a conservative, a real scholar in the writing of Scripture.
I can also recommend Michael Kruger, who's been enormously helpful to me.
Yeah. I've heard of him.
He had this.
Daniel Wallace. Thank you.
John's getting the numbers on the desk. So there's Daniel Wallace from DTS.
.edu.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have Michael Kruger. His book Canon Revisited was really, really interesting.
Good.
So yeah, I think this stuff is because again, this is so foundational to us.
Yes.
Other, like you were saying, there's other denominations. They're not really going to care as much about
No.
how do you understand the canon to come to. Well, if they don't believe it's God's word, what do they even care?
And my question is, why are you even in the ministry?
I know,
if you don't believe it's
know.
God's word, what are you doing? What's your purpose? What's your call in life? If you don't believe it's a word of God, then are you up there just faking people out, or?
Well, there's a lot of people. I've asked that same question, and I think some of it is you have people that are they're fierce academics and they love the study of religion in general, but it's like the fact that there are atheists who make a living out of studying religion.
Yeah, Bart Ehrman.
Is so that's that's a
and then others, I suppose. I just think they're all into social work. They just want to, and it's they would be working for the government if they were not working for the church, because all they're in is just so, and that's a good thing. I mean, I want to feed people too. It's obvious we do a lot of that here in Birmingham. I don't want people to starve. We want them to be fed. We give a lot of our money to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we absolutely do.
But I want them to I want them to eat this right here. I want them to hear this.
Final book recommendation before we spend some more time specifically in the sermon. You brought up The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah, that Edersheim book.
Yeah. He's got one on the Old Testament you would love.
Okay. Is that the
It's
temple?
not that he does. No, he has one on the temple too.
Okay.
But it's just it's the Old Testament, and he just, if you love to read people like Dickens who writes so beautifully.
Yeah, okay.
You will love it.
Well, I'm going to pick up both of those because
Now, that Old Testament one's like that. I read it for a while as a devotional.
Oh, okay.
Because he does it in short little sections.
Oh, neat. All right.
And so I read it as
Just
my
a little bit every
devotional
morning,
time.
yeah.
Like that.
Well, there's one, and I picked it up again recently to prepare to preach something, and I'm not going to remember it, but it was another life and times of Christ, but it was written very recently, very conservative, very faithful, but I'm like, there's got to be more here, so my ears really pricked up when you said that.
Yeah, his is considered a classic.
Yeah.
You will like reading him because you like to read well-written literature.
I really do.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of.
It was the
Dickens.
Yes.
You always just go back to Dickens. Marley was dead. That
To
was
begin
for
with,
certain.
yeah.
Marley.
Marley was dead to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that is such a classic.
Oh gosh.
Christmas. Okay, we're gonna have a whole podcast on Dickens when we get closer to Christmas. We'll just do that. We'll sit down. Okay, couple of things about because it sounds like you need to get home for a nap. Are you okay? Your voice sounds a little tired.
No, I'm sleepy.
Oh, okay, all right.
My body knows. This is Sunday.
Yes.
I preached. What's the next thing you do?
You take a
fall
nap.
Asleep.
You take a nap. You go home and collapse. Yeah. John, wake up. John's in the same way. He's over there. Okay, so. And I made my kids take notes because you were talking about how this is specifically to young people, and you said at the beginning you talked about how almost like responsibility has become like a dirty word, like people don't want to take responsibility.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right.
But Joseph was immediately rewarded because he took responsibility in Potiphar's house.
To do what I am certain he felt like was beneath him.
Right.
This is beneath me. I was reared better than this. This is so menial. It's not befitting my ability. And he obviously was a young man with incredible genius, great mind. And I'm sure he felt like that, but he did not allow himself to give way to that feeling.
What was so interesting to me, though, is he submits himself in that way. And the Bible doesn't say, like, I guess how long a time it was, but it was quickly that he showed himself to be worthy of this responsibility. And then, I love it, I forget which verse number it is, where it talks about how everything, the Lord started to prosper him in everything.
Yep.
I've read this story, I don't know, dozens of times, but I had never thought of that connection that you brought up about how this is what God does for every person, every man that's in this covenant line.
Yep.
You connected it back to Abraham. And I was like, duh, that makes perfect sense that the Lord would bless him even above and beyond like his faithfulness.
That's why they
there.
pay me $16,000.
I know, $16,000 a year per pastor. Someday I'll ascend.
You'll make that
height.
extra $1,000.
I tell you, yeah. Well,
Yeah, I just was thinking about that. How everybody in this line here became a blessing to everybody around them. Abraham did.
Yes.
Isaac did. Jacob did, and then now Joseph.
And
did.
it wasn't because they were perfect.
No. Oh, I started. Jacob was far from. Isaac was far from. Abraham was far from perfect.
Well, but a lot of people. You started the series with. I don't even know if we got to do a show about it, but you started the series with talking about how most people kind of view Joseph as perfect. You know, they look to that. They look, oh, he was sold as a slave. Wasn't that bad for him? Oh, he resisted the temptation with Potiphar's wife. Oh, he did all this. He's great.
Yeah.
But you started the series
in
saying,
a unique way. I've never done that my entire
Really?
ministry. Yeah, my whole ministry. And I've preached on Joseph before, but I've never started out looking at the faults of Joseph, what God was going to have to correct and work on. Because Joseph, to me, is the nearest Old Testament prefiguring of the Messiah that there is.
I was hoping you were going to go there. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
There are others that do. David at times.
Sure.
Solomon at a time or two will. And there are others in the Old Testament, but nobody like Joseph prefigures the coming of Christ.
Well, even him being sold as a slave and the pieces of silver and what, you could go all day with stuff like that.
Yeah. And I'll point out more as we go through, because there are more things as you go through this that you see. Gosh, this is a picture of the coming Christ.
But by showing his faults, you were able to humanize him in a way that certainly like the kids in Sunday school, they don't get that. You don't get to see the humanity of Joseph as easily. Yeah. Obviously, you see him suffer and you empathize with him, but to understand, he was just a prideful kind of snot-nosed kid too.
To identify with him is an important issue. Because he becomes so much bigger than life, even right here, what I did today, he becomes so much bigger than life. When have you ever seen a 17-year-old do this stuff, and you just have to think. And then he's going to be a 17, 18-year-old man, and he's going to turn down what must have been, I am certain, was a beautiful woman. You don't find, they're all, that's what we're living for, We're living for the older woman, the Miss Robinson experience.
Well, yeah, everything. It's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. All these things that the world wants to offer you, and yeah, of course, like in our flesh, we want to go after those things. But it does make it all the more amazing. Just returning to his youth, like it does. It makes me wonder. This would take us forever to talk about it. We can't go the whole way. But just understanding how, like, our culture has been built now, and we say, well, adulthood begins at 18 because you're legally an adult. That's when you graduate from high school. It's usually the first time you leave your parents' house, that sort of thing. But, like, that's not God's law that you begin adulthood right then. Yeah, no. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Listen, I know people 60 years old and they're not grown up yet. I'm not joking. I know some teenagers have got more responsibility than some 60-year-olds I know. And that's for sure, for real.
No, it's true. The whole arrested development thing, like the extended adolescence, you even used that as a sermon illustration one time. I guess, as a father of young children, it just makes me wonder, like, how can I stem the tide in our culture and help my children? We're looking at Harper because she's contorting herself in strange ways.
She's over there laying down, about to take a nap.
Yep, just like we are. We're in our last 5 minutes, I promise. That's 5 Baptist preacher minutes, though, so you have no idea how long it's actually going to take.
We're wrapping up.
In conclusion, he said for the 14th. Now moving into the sub-points of my last point. I guess it just makes me wonder, like, what am I going to do, or how can I help my children grow up in important ways and take responsibility even as they're still under my roof, So that's just something I'm thinking about.
I look back at my parents. I had to work.
Yes, which is good. That's good. It's good for young people.
From the time that I was young, I mean, I had a paper route, and then but before all of that, when I was, 6, 7, 8, I would run for a man in the church who would drive me around. I'd run to the door and collect for newspapers.
Right.
And he'd pay me $0.25. And he eventually upped me, all day on Saturday to 50 cents. But when I was 12, I had to go to work in my daddy's store. We all had to.
Yeah.
Because Dad said, listen, if we don't make it, we don't eat. Mm-hmm. So you better get in here and work. And it was a great experience. It taught me how to work with the public.
Yes.
And I think doing that for your kids, making them go and work for the public, is a good education for them. Make them get a job when they can get one.
You know who's doing a good job with this, at least that I can see, is the young people that work at Publix. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems like they, at least the ones around here, like, they have really good management that tells them how to interact with people.
Chick-fil-A does a great job with it.
Chick-fil-A's another one.
They do a good job with it. My 2 oldest worked for Chick-fil-A when they were teenagers in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a great job. It was. The great part about it is they would generally work at night, and by about 9:30 or 10, they'd come home and they'd bring me a bunch of food.
Absolutely.
So I told them, you go to work, you bring some food home tonight.
That's exactly right, or else you don't get to go.
Whatever was left over, bring it home.
You come home, bring me your paycheck, bring me the extra food.
I blew up like a toad frog. So
did you really?
I did, man. I was eating Chick-fil-A every night at 10 o'clock. My wife said, she'd say, you are killing yourself eating all that stuff at 10 o'clock at night.
I don't want to wake up.
Yeah. So.
But
anyway.
it tasted good on your way out. What a way to go. Now you've limited yourself. Now you're just eating Krispy Kremes. Man, when we were on vacation, we ate so much Chick-fil-A. Every road trip it was Chick-fil-A.
Well,
oh
I
gosh.
got a Krispy Kreme pumpkin spice donut the other morning.
How'd you feel about that?
My stars, it was so.
Man, that's starting to make my mouth water. Let's just pray and go home.
Okay.
This has been good hanging out with you, Pastor.
Good.
Thanks
I'm
for
glad
doing
you're
this.
back.
I'm glad I'm back too. We're so you guys will probably be seeing this on Monday morning. Happy Labor Day. We hope that this helps
Have a
you
good
rest.
Labor Day. If
And,
Krispy Kreme is open, go get you one.
And
You
we'll
deserve it.
And Pastor will be out of town next week, but I'll see you here either with Patrick or somebody else, and we'll
Patrick
we'll
will
see you
be
then.
preaching. Good
We'll see.
preacher. Patrick's a good
No
preacher.
question about it. Say goodbye, Pastor.
Goodbye, Pastor.